to find words that adequately express what I want to say to you today has been almost impossible. Witness to the reign of God, inspiring leader in our Pax Christi family, faithful teacher and guide, brilliant seeker of peace, gentle, strong, wise visionary, committed prophet, servant leader, friend, great friend. So I turn to another visionary woman whose words often capture what I feel in my heart, but am often unable to say. Elizabeth Johnson, author of She Who Is. In Friends of God and Prophets, Elizabeth wrote, "Remembering the great crowd of female friends of God and prophets opens up possibilities for the future. Their lives bespeak an unfinished agenda that is now in our hands. Their memory is a challenge to action. Their companionship points the way. Such a fully realized memory of the history of women's involvement with God ushers in an irresistible call for conversion, away from the marginalization of women and their gifts in church and society, and toward full recognition and equal participation. Pat, you are so clearly a friend of God's and a prophet who has opened up and will continue to open up possibilities for the future. Your life bespeaks an unfinished agenda that is now in our hands. The memory of your years of commitment to peace through Pax Christi UK and Pax Christi International is a challenge to action. Your companionship points the way. How can we thank you? This is not goodbye. But thank you from all of your Pax Christi friends and admirers for the many, many ways you have enriched our global movement in East Timor and in Israel and Palestine, in response to the nuclear weapons threat, and in the Catholic Nonviolence Initiative, as a leader of secretaries and secretaries general and directors of Pax Christi sections around the world, as a go-to person for every important committee and conference and workshop and working group that Pax Christi has ever thought of. Pat, we thank you for your energy and your participation and your commitment. The journey is not over. It's just that we're going to begin a new stage. So thank you, Pat.
Thank you, Marie, and good afternoon, all of you, my dear sisters and brothers. It's a wonderful privilege and gift to be able to be here today with all of you, and it's a tremendous tribute to Pat to see how many of you have come to express your affection, gratitude, and admiration to this truly wonderful woman. Marie and myself have had the privilege as co-presidents to serve with Pat for 9 years, and before that on the board. We stand here, Marie and myself, as co-presidents. This is a deliberate decision of the Pax Christi Worldwide family to mirror a style of leadership where a laywoman and a bishop share leadership, but as equals. And that has been that has been one of the greatest gifts of my life, to have spent 9 years sharing, learning from, and ministering to, but always as one with my dear sister Marie. And I want to thank her, and through her to thank Pat for the opportunity we've had to share a journey. When I think of Pat today, and as I've experienced over the years. The words of St. Angela Merici come to mind. Be confident, she said, be confident, stick with it, risk new things, and be prepared for big surprises. I think Pat would agree with that. But as Marie has already noted, what has touched me and from which I've learned so much over the years in relationship with Pat and in all the meetings and engagements I've shared with her, is that she truly is a woman in the prophetic tradition of the scriptures. A woman in the prophetic tradition, because her spirituality has been rooted in the reality of the world. Truly, that is where she has found her God, and therefore a very special God, rooted in the reality of the poor, the marginalized, the suffering, and those who have had their dignity crushed in so many ways by war, all the forms of violence, conflict, abuse, and everything else. And because her profound spirituality was rooted in her actual living experience of that reality, the world as it is, she then discerned with her God what that would mean. And therefore that enabled her to bring in the very best of the justice and peace tradition, to start from experience, to analyze it, to listen to what the Word of God is saying about that experience and analysis, to discern possible and realistic responses, to go out and reach to the peripheries, as Pope Francis has so often asked us to do, to come back and with sisters and brothers to discern and evaluate and then start the process again. That, for me, is Pat. And God looks on her today with a smile. Thank you, Pat.
Margaret was indeed really disappointed that she wasn't here in person to read or to say what she wrote down and sent by email. She said these words are not what she would have delivered because she could have fleshed it out with anecdotes and stories, but all we have is the written word, and I read that with great pleasure. For those who don't know, I was involved in Pax Christi before Pat was appointed. I'm not sure if I was on the interview panel, but those that were made a very wise choice. So I've known Pat for over 30 years as a colleague in peace activities and as a friend. It was a great privilege to be asked to give a reflection on Pat, which I cannot do now as I'm unable to come because of illness. But Pat, as many of you will know, has the same commitment to her friends and family as she has to Pax Christi. She has that rare ability of being a good listener, remembering and being interested in what people are doing. She loves to spend time with her family, her brother, sister-in-law, and relatives here and in Ireland. Nothing gives her more pleasure than planning meals, theatre trips, and outings for special events for them. In all she does, she puts thought and care, and this thoughtfulness extends to her friends. As many of you here will have experienced, Pat has great interest in her friends and their families. With children, she remembers birthdays, how old a child is, what is going on in their lives, who's at school, university, what they're studying, where they work, and so on. In her relationships with her friends, she shows caring, empathy, and a deep genuine interest in their lives. She's open to sharing her life and shares in a deep way the lives of her family and friends. I can honestly say there is nothing superficial about Pat. She has a special gift of knowing when someone needs help. And if I were here today, I could give you many examples. Sometimes she spent her precious few spare weekends helping dear friends who are alone and in need of practical help and company. She's been known to go halfway over London twice a week after work to help sort out problems for people who have no family to look after them. But don't think that Pat does these out of duty, because she does not. They're done out of care and compassion and empathy for the other person. And whatever she is doing, she will find time for giggles and fun and laughter. Again, I'm sure that many of you will identify with this. Pat's relationship with people is one of caring, interest, thoughtfulness, and commitment. That is the very essence of Pat, and it is these values and gifts that are at the root of and underpin her work for peace and non-violence. Lastly, you may not know it, but Pat does and did have a life outside Pax Christi. She loves her dance classes, walking, the theatre, books, the radio, museums and art galleries, and of course visiting her friends. I hope her first visit after retirement will be to Leeds. We all know that Pat will not stop campaigning for peace and will still be involved in activities. But Pat, I hope you will have time to enjoy God's creation as well as trying to save it. Thank you on behalf of everyone here today for your continuing friendship and love. Margaret, then Stuart took over, and then I took over and handed over to Holly. I would endorse every single word of that, as everyone here will. But I'd like to just mention one person here who I think, though she's very quiet and self-effacing, deserves a special thank you, Forster, for this cake. And if I wondered what the symbolism, there is a symbolism to the cake. There are 29 peace lilies to symbolize every year of Pat's service to Pax Christi. And you'll notice that there are 3 tiers and shapes, because, as Forster said, peace comes in all shapes and sizes, and peacemakers come in all shapes and sizes. So it's a tribute to, as the ribbon reads, to the one and only Pat Gaffney.
It's very nice to be here, I must say, to say thank you to Pat. I feel always a bit of a fraud, really, because although I've been national president of Pax Christi, or president of the British section of Pax Christi, for all those years, I've actually done nothing. Pat does it all, and she writes the letters that I send round to encourage people for Peace Sunday, and she organises me for appearances and meetings and photographs and whatever. That's on top of everything else that you've heard. And it's so I really, well, you know, really left Teresa, her successor, in a bit of a bind, because she's going to have to do the same, I'm afraid. I'm not really, I'm not terribly proactive. So that's a little confession. But at every annual general meeting, and I always try to get to that, even if I do nothing else, Bruce always says, after the General Secretary's report, how many Pat Gaffneys are there? Because she does several people's work. She's worth more than just one person. So when you say one and only, I mean, it's a bit of a mirage, really, because for the amount of work that she does would take 4 or 5 ordinary people. So I just want to thank her formally, if you like, on behalf of the church here in England and Wales. It's always kind of a creative tension, shall we say, between Pax Christi and the church, because the whole business of peace is something that we subscribe to, we pay lip service to it, but when it comes down to actually doing something about it, of course, people always find something else to do. I remember some very, very poignant moments. So when the Iraq War was starting, there were just 3 or 4 of us standing at the end of Downing Street. Bruce was there, I was there. I wasn't Pax Christi, I was a parish priest in London then, but I went down with 2 of my parishioners. And we stood there, we were the only people there. We were getting cold. And Bruce told, people were walking past. But we did this little vigil on the road, the other side of Whitehall. That's the sort of thing that requires kind of real grit and commitment, because we were there. We were doing our witness. We weren't going to just let this happen without making our statement, and that's what's so important really in the life of not just of Pax Christi but of the whole church. Things are changing in the church, but we've still got to say our piece. We've still got to have those words out there and actions, because otherwise we won't be true followers and friends of Jesus. And when it comes down to it, we're trying to bring his peace to the world, or to make it happen, or to reveal it, or to discover it, or whatever phrase we care to use. So being a kind of a reluctant peacemaker, a bit of a kind of someone who hides away a little bit, I've always been in awe of Pat's courage, really, courage which I don't have, and I'm sure that other people too would agree that that's probably her most amazing, I think we use that word properly, amazing characteristic, is that she is so courageous. So now we have some pleasant things to do. We have some gifts to hand over, is that right? I've got them all on my phone, but I should put them on a piece of paper and then I know what I'm doing. Now, these are like official gifts.
This is the memory album.
A memory album, right. Does that go with it? Or?
What, this?
No, the card.
This card.
No.
Oh no, that's something else.
That's something else. This is an album of memories for you. There we are. There we are, very nice. So it's not just one of those photo books that everybody's doing. This is an album with a proper spine and things stuck in it. It's good, very good. So there we are.
Well,
So that's one thing. And then
when we sent out the invitations, we asked people to share those memories so that we could put them together in a book for Pat. So that's stuff that's come in.
that's terrific,
Yeah.
isn't it? Yeah. No, the other thing that we wanted to do today was to honour Pat by making her an honorary vice president of Pax Christi. So Pax Christi UK or whatever. So that means we're not letting you go, basically. So over to Teresa.
Okay, so please raise your glasses. I'm just gathering up all the wonderful things that have been said and all the emotions in the room. I would like to propose a toast with every blessing to Pat.